Hello class. In this assignment we are going to do shadows on the elevation, and unlike the plan, there's less shortcuts. It really is more like drawing out shadows as if you were hand rendering, at least at this point in Illustrator. And I'm sure all of you guys know there's 3D software out there that if you modeled it, you can get shadows, and we will be doing that later in the semester. But for now, I think it's good practice to have a basic understanding of shadows, because we will need to do that. And so before you get into the Illustrator component in class, I'm going to have you sketch out the shadows on paper so you know what you're doing and you understand the geometries of this house. So when you go, particularly on this elevation, to drawing those shadows, you know what they are. And as I talk about in class, and I know in other classes here we've been very specific about constructing geometrically these shadows. Well, no one's going to measure them. So we just have to draw them like we know what we're doing. It does take a little bit of knowledge, it does take a little bit of geometry, but not tremendous amounts. And what we really want to do primarily as we do into the elevations is make sure that our sun is cast in the same way. So in my case, my shadow means my sun is up high and to the left. And that means on my elevation, my shadows have to be up high and to the left. Therefore, my shadows are going to come down this way at 45 degrees. So I know I'm going to go over a lot of that stuff in class, so that was just a summary there. But what I need to do is I'm going to come to layers, and I'm going to lock shadows for the plan. It's okay if it's already locked in my case. What I need to do is I need to make a new layer. And I got to make this layer all the way at the top, because the plan, the shadows were underneath all the objects, but here they're going to be on top of all these layers. So I have to put a shadow on top. So I'm going to go to my topmost color for my elevations, which is timber. I'm going to call this shadow elevations here. And I can set this up already. I know that I'm going to have to do the same transparency trick to make it easier by setting the layer as transparent rather than objects. I talked about that in the previous video. So I'm going to hit this little circle, come up to transparency, and I'm going to purposefully set mine a little bit higher than my plan. So I'm going to do 30%. But again, I've seen shadows where they're very light and they look really nice, and I've seen shadows where they're very, very, very dark and they look good. So you get to sort of determine that yourself. But there we go. I should be good to go. I've got black, and what I really need to do is literally start drawing out these shadows as I think they exist. And I'm going to do a few here for you that require drawing, and I'm going to do a few on the windows that there's one tiny little shortcut we can do on those. But the reality is, it's if you draw it out by hand first and you understand what the shadows are doing, you just really have to replicate it using the pen tool in Illustrator. So there's nothing new there. So I'll do a few, just get us started. Then I'll show you my finalized version, and then you can go ahead and do it. So for example, the roof is going to cast a shadow. In fact, it'll cast a shadow on these timber beams as well. So I'm going to take my shadow, and of course it's going to be casting a 45 degree here, but that's going to be overhung, so I don't need to worry about the 45 degree, but it's going to not intersect the chimney. So I'm going to do it basically parallel or pretty close to parallel to that to get the roof overhang. If this corner is looking a little high, I'll just click with my right arrow on that one end and I'll push down a little bit to sort of straighten it out, and I've got a shadow cast from the edge of my roof. Right? If I'm sort of looking down this file a little bit, I've got this, which is an overhang, and you can check out the plan how big it is, but it's purposely intended to cast an overhang. Again, it's going to be 45 degrees from down here, so I don't have that because that's not on the building, so it'll end up just being, actually, I'm going to delete that because I shouldn't have used that. I should use my pen tool, approximately ever how thick I think it's going to be, and it's going to come out about 45. Oh, shoot. Sorry, let me do that one more time. I hit the wrong button. Zoom in a little bit and come down about how deep I think the shadow is. I'm going to come across, holding shift to draw a straight line, so that's about 45 degrees from that corner. Come up about the same height as that. Come over, down, and over, and close it off. Now, when I do this window, I could draw in here again, but I can also maybe take a shortcut by just drawing a line and giving it a thickness, like say 3, oops, not 23, sorry, 3, and no fill is needed, but it doesn't matter if it has one. in this particular case, but in some cases it might. And I can just draw this up into there just to make it overlap. And we can see it's like this trim is casting a shadow on the frame and the frame's casting a little shadow on the glass. Just a little one like that, but it goes a long way. All right. And then I can continue to sort of come down here, this roof overhang. This is pretty deep. So I'm just going to draw, and I'm just going to estimate again, right? Got to make sure it all feels right. But I'm just going to use my big rectangle and say, why don't I come down to mostly through the window on that case. On this one, this part of the, as we can see on the plan, is pretty proud. It comes out a lot further, so the shadow from the roof line is going to be much shorter. And I'm going to have to sort of connect the 45. So I'm going to come down, maybe come down like that far, come out to about a 45-degree line there, come up about the same level, and then connect back in to the roof line and draw the shadow. So it'd be something like that. Now this thing, this red component of mine, yours might be a different color, but my red piece is proud of the brown piece. So it's also going to cast a shadow on this back wall. And just, I don't have to be super accurate about it, but I can come down here and see here, well, it looks like it's maybe about 1/3 of the way over from this shadow between these two spacing is how far over that shadow is. So I can come and use that as a clue and just go and draw this a box approximately 1/3 of the way over, and it should be short of the shadow of the roof, of course, so something like that works fairly decently. So now it looks like this is coming out and that's set back deep, and all these windows are going to have little lines, and I could also do it, I could use a box like that as well instead of a line if I wanted to. And the only thing is the nice thing about using the line is it makes sure they're all the same thickness, which is nice because they are all the same depth. But I know I basically doubled that width, so actually that frame would not cast a shadow. This frame doesn't have a shadow because that's being cast by the trim, in which case there is none. So I have to shorten that shadow now, and it's just on that side of the frame. And that's why, you can fig it fairly easily like I'm doing here. That means it's got to come up a little bit too, right there and right there. But you really want to know what you're doing, right, to make it look right. And so I've cast that shadow. But ultimately, it's the same thing all the way across. On some of these, let's say, this is where the line trick for shadows comes in nicely, because I can take my line and I can draw basically an inverted L like this, make it a stroke, and make it my thickness, which I was using 3, and it has this nice shadow rather than using rectangles. But once I get down here, I've got this guy casting a shadow, so on and so forth. So you want to go cast all the shadows, big and small, that you think match your plan. And I've already done that. You don't need to watch me go anymore. But I'll just leave this up for a minute. You can see where all my shadowing is going on. I've got little ones cast by stairs, the deck, this overhang of this porch I've got here, that overhang, how the chimney sticks out here, how there's a difference in shadow between this awning and the chimney versus on the main building, all those little details. That's why I think it's really good to go ahead and draw it by hand first and practice it, because those hand techniques, they don't go away just because you're working in the computer. You still want to draw it, and you want to draw it the way you want to have it be done so it looks nice. So there it is, take a look. You can pause the video if you need longer, but I'm going to end this video, and we're going to about ready to go on to the last step for this week, which is adding some trees and people into the background of this elevation. I'll do that in the next video.